Marine Captain Nick Letendre died earlier this month in an explosion in Iraq. He was 27, a husband and father, and he was buried in Arlington National Cemetery, a few miles from where he grew up. As America observes Memorial Day,
I have been directed by the President of the United States and the Commandant of the Marine Corps to inform you that today at 0530, your son was killed in action while in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Not very many of us can accomplish our goals or our dreams, and he always knew where he wanted to go, and he did it.
A Gold Star family is one who has lost a loved one serving in the United States military. It's a distinction no family ever seeks, a bond shared through sacrifice, remembrance, and profound loss. I'm Nick Letendre, and I've been a Gold Star sibling for over 18 years. In those 18 years, I've learned that while ceremonies fade, medals are stored away, and life continues, the story doesn't end for the families left behind. This podcast is dedicated to remembering those who gave everything for their country and to telling the lesser-known stories, the quiet, powerful journeys of grief, strength, resilience, and hope that follows after the flags are folded and the crowds disperse. These are Gold Star Stories. Welcome back to Gold Star Stories. Before we get started today, I just want to take a quick moment to talk honestly with you about something important. Creating this podcast and sharing these stories isn't easy, and to be completely transparent, it isn't free either. Like many of you, I've always found it difficult asking for money, especially when it involves military families. And for years, I donated my own time and resources to charity events because the idea of benefiting personally felt morally complicated to me. But the reality is this project comes with real costs. We have professional equipment that needs upkeep, we have software subscriptions, hosting fees, and we actively spend money to promote this show so these stories reach as many people as possible. We have big dreams for Gold Star Stories. We want this to grow into a project that Gold Star families everywhere can truly be proud of, a platform that properly honors and preserves these precious memories. But we can't do it alone. If you're able to help, even in a small way, please consider buying us a coffee through the link below. For those unfamiliar, Buy Me a Coffee is a simple way to support creators and projects you believe in by making small, one-time contributions, much like treating someone to a cup of coffee. If you're a company or organization, please reach out. We'd love to discuss advertising packages that could help sustain this mission. This show may not be huge yet, but we deeply believe in its importance. People never question when major news networks produce similar content and profit enormously from it. Supporting us means directly supporting a Gold Star family committed to preserving the legacies of those who gave everything. With that said, today we have a very special guest joining us. Mallory Crabtree is a Gold Star daughter who lost her father, Sergeant First Class Daniel B. Crabtree, when she was just 17 months old. Her experience is unique, not marked by direct memories of her dad, but shaped entirely by his legacy and the community that surrounded her growing up. Mallory offers a perspective that's deeply important, one that I've only observed from the outside. Mallory, thank you for joining us today. I'd love to hear more about your father and the incredible life that he lived.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. So my dad, I'm from Canton, Ohio, and my father is also from the area as well. My father enlisted into the United States Army at 17 years old. He was a senior in high school. He did early enlistment. He always wanted to be in the Army since he was a young child. He always wanted to be a Green Beret. And my father also has gone to the University of Akron, and he was a police officer, and he also was a part of the Cuyahoga Falls SWAT team. So he also has that SWAT, police, military background. And he, got his associates in criminal justice, went to police academy, did that for a couple of years, was still in line with the Army as well, and he moved on, and he wanted to try to go be a Green Beret. And when he was doing this training, he was working countless of hours training and all that. He was walking with sandbags from city to city training as well. His first time he tried to join as a Green Beret, he actually broke his leg. So when I was born, my father broke his leg jumping out of an airplane. So he had to try it again and go back in and become a Green Beret, and he made it. So.
Broke his leg jumping out of an airplane. That's a pretty cool story, though.
Yeah. It was either landing on someone or it was breaking his leg, so.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that's a fair choice, I suppose. So, basically, I mean, obviously from your, general memory, you obviously probably don't remember anything from that
Right.
exact time. So all you've ever known, essentially, is being a Gold Star daughter.
Right.
Give me some of, like, your first memories on this, of where you kind of maybe first started realizing what it was, because maybe there's not a moment like that. Maybe it's just something that you've always just kind of embraced and known. Was there a moment where you kind of came in and actually realized how deep and significant this was?
So I always grew up knowing and going to military events since I was little. Like, I lost my dad at 17 months old, and, I don't know anything different than that. So really, I started to piece together everything when I was probably around 4 or 5 years old. That's really when I knew about my dad passing away. I didn't know, because I was going to school, and everyone had their fathers, and I was in that, like, preschool, kindergarten age, and I didn't understand that. And then as I got into kindergarten, first grade, up in there, I started to realize, what had happened to my dad and everything. Like, really, I fully grasped it probably, like, first and second grade. But, I've been told everything about my dad. I don't have those memories to cherish, so everything that I do know as being 20 years old is from my family, all together, and his friends.
That's very... that makes sense that would be the time frame, because I'm starting to think back to my kids, and when they're starting to have the Father's Day lunches and stuff. That would be of course the time that you're starting to question, like, what
Right.
but before that you really don't know any different.
Right.
And that is definitely one of those things I think my nephew had to deal with as well. But with you being told all the stories, do you know the story about how your mom found out?
Yes. So my mom and I, so my mom and dad were building a house next to my mom's parents' house. So my parents bought the land next door from my grandparents, and were starting to build their forever home. And my dad was deployed to Iraq while the house was being built, so he's never stepped foot in my mom's house. So my mom and I were living at my grandparents' house during the time. Both of my mom's parents were working during this time. They were at work, and my father left right after my first birthday. That's when he was deployed. So it's summertime. My mom's a teacher. She's home for the summer, and she was home with me. I was taking a nap, and 2 military men came to the front door of my grandparents' house, and my mom was home alone when she received this news. And the thing about it is my dad's brother was down in the Atlanta area visiting my dad's mom and my dad's sister, who also lives down there. So they were down there visiting, and they also had 2 military men come to the front door of my grandma's house, sorry. And they were told not to call anyone. They had to deliver this message to the intermediate family first before they could call each other. So they came to the front door of my mom's house, and she had told my grandparents. And they came home. And that's really all I know, is that's what happened. I don't know anything beyond that. It's really...
So your dad's parents had a CACO as well, or a casualty assistance officer telling them.
Right.
And then your mom had one, so that was similar to...
Right, yeah, because my dad's parents are not together. They're divorced. So
okay.
My grandfather lives here in Ohio.
Okay. So how did that work? Did somebody go to each one of their houses then?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So they had 3 sets then, essentially.
Right. I don't know if it was the same people or different. I don't know that. But I do know that they went to my grandma's and my grandpa's, and then to my mom. So they knew exactly where to find my mom.
Gotcha. How does this change your relationship, like growing up with everything? Do you feel like your family on dad's side became closer to you? It's such a weird dynamic. And I'll tell
Right.
you kind of my thought process on it, because it's, especially with it being separated, right, is everybody feels this intense crushing weight. Obviously, my mom
Mhm.
felt the crushing weight, and his wife felt the crushing weight as well,
Right.
obviously. And it becomes kind of almost a battle of like, who's going to go where, who gets to go and be part of these things. And in my
Mhm.
family, I think that kind of eventually just kind of tore it apart, because it was, everybody wants to honor all the time,
Right.
and then people start feeling left out and all this kind of stuff. Did you notice anything like that on your side of things?
I didn't. It honestly brought us closer together. Um, with my grandma living in Atlanta, she would come up here and visit like every summer. And my aunt also almost every summer. So I kind of, because I don't know how the dynamic was before, right?
Obviously, yes.
So yeah, I don't have that knowledge of that, but like I would say it's brought us closer. And I talk to my grandmother every single day.
That's beautiful. That's how it should
And
be.
I talk to my family quite frequently. My uncle, talk to him all the time. He's 20 minutes away. So you know we do spend a lot of time together, and they support me 1000%.
That's awesome. That's definitely how it should be. So your dad had siblings as well?
Yes, he had a sister and a brother.
Were they older, younger?
So they were both older
Okay,
than my dad.
gotcha.
So my dad was the baby.
So with all of these events that you've been to, I know some of them are like crazy. Tell me some of the cool things that you've come across with this. I mean, you've obviously had experiences that nobody else has gotten to live,
Right.
unfortunate circumstances that you've, gotten to come to it by. But regardless, I think, it really stands for how honored these guys can be.
Yeah, so, growing up, I really didn't know much about the resources out there. Like, I didn't know about Snowball Express until I was almost out of high school. So I
Why
did.
do you think that is? Is that because your family was just had it kind of under control, or just didn't like reach? I know my family did not do like taps and stuff, so we didn't understand the resources either. That's why I'm asking. I'm
Right.
not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was just because, like, I was younger and I was always in school, or I feel like the schedules just never really aligned, because my mom's a teacher. So, like,
That makes sense.
when I'm in school, she's in school, and my mom was, I also, growing up, my brother was diagnosed on the spectrum. So it is quite challenging for us to be able to go and do things with my brother as well. So my brother is my half brother.
That's understandable.
So, and I just feel like, it was just a schedule conflict, and, it just never really, the timeline never really matched up. But I would say, like, I do have a really good support team, like, with my nonprofit for my college. I did meet a lot of Gold Star children when I flew down to Tampa in 2022. So I did get to connect on that level with, like, kids my own age.
Was that one of the first times that you got to connect with people?
Yes.
Was that kind of like a pivotal moment for you? Because for me, when I met somebody else that had the same ideology as me, I was like, holy crap, I'm not crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like the best time of my life. I was so upset to leave. I didn't want to leave because, you get 25 Gold Star children from all over the country. And then, they're in one spot, like, around me, no one's gone through the same situation as me. And, like, hearing their stories really helped me a lot. And, they remember, and they're older. So it's kind of different on that aspect because, I was 17 months old. They were, like, older than that. So it's, I just didn't have those memories to share like they did.
I get that you didn't have the memories, but it certainly shaped how you were, raised regardless. It's got to have a huge impact on everything. So tell me a little bit about, mom, and how does she remember your dad? Is there anything growing up that you guys had tradition-wise that you would do yearly to remember him or anything like that?
My mom and dad were high school sweethearts. They met in high school, and they got married in August of 2000. So, but we have pool parties every June 8th, and we go and visit his grave on June 8th as well. Growing up, there was always 5K races in his honor down in Columbus and later in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, where he was a police officer. And, just dinners and everything, we always were finding some way of remembering his legacy. Whether it's, in our daily lives talking to people, or it was, coming together with family and friends who knew my father.
What other stories do you might have that are worth sharing of Dad? Have you made any relationships with, people that he was, with in the military or anything like that? Did anybody step in for you on that front?
Yeah, we're really close with his unit. They do parachute jumps on like every weekend around June 8th. My dad's unit, we have a picnic and they're jumping out of airplanes.
That's pretty cool.
So they do that.
Have you jumped out of one yet?
They offered it to me, but I'm not doing it.
Okay.
I'm not. My grandma was just telling me about that last night. She goes, I got an email about it if you want to do it. And I was like, I'm all right. I'm like, I don't need to break my leg too. But, so, his unit, jumps out of airplanes, and we have a picnic. It's, barbecue. It's a great time. And they named a building in my father's honor on Rickenbacker Air Base. So it's a beautiful building, and there's a plaque of his name and boots and a helmet, and the building is beautiful. And that was dedicated in his honor in October 2022. That was the first time I started public speaking. I was 17 years old. I was senior in high school, and they asked me if anyone in the family wanted to speak, and I said, I'll do it. And then, my family was like, are you sure? Are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I want to do it. And so I did it, and I went off to college, and, that next fall, and I couldn't ever forget about that day. I wanted to do it again. I worked so hard to figure out, like, when I could do it again. I was like, I made a few phone calls. I was like, if there's any time you need me to speak at anything, I'm willing to do it. And a few days later, they called me and they said, here's this event. We need you to, we're asking if you could speak. And I said, yep, I will be there. And then during that time, I also started doing podcasts. And yeah, I've just been doing that, and I'm in college right now.
So when you go to speak, what are you speaking about in general?
My story about my father and what happened to him, my life growing up, and, just I feel like Gold Star families are not talked about. Nobody knows what a Gold Star family is.
I get, my kids don't really fully grasp the Gold Star thing, which is crazy because my son has my brother's exact name, first, middle, last. Mm-hmm. He understands obviously the loss of it and stuff, but for the past 10 years, I don't think I've really talked about it that much. I've kind of backed away because it's pretty heavy stuff for a little kid.
Oh yeah.
So just recently, he's just kind of like looking at me like, you're going to let me get involved and learn about this stuff now? And I'm like, yeah, I think it's about time for you to understand, what you're named after. It's
right.
Not just a loss that we have in our family. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes behind it.
Right.
So I think it's I think it's super cool that you're going out there and you're able to talk about it now, though. So when we are, we're out in public and people, we say, hey, we're a gold star. Most of the time we'll get people to be like, oh, congratulations.
Right.
And we were like, you don't know what that means, do you?
No, they don't.
And then they just look at you like you just totally rocked their world like a sad puppy afterwards. And I got to the point I hated that interaction. I just hated.
Oh, it's awkward. It's definitely awkward because it'll be one thing and they're like, how do you, like, because I have a military ID and they just kind of look at me like, there's no way this 4'11" girl is in the military. And I say, oh, well, I'm a Gold Star family, or I lost my father. And they just say nothing. And it's just, it just surprises me that, people are not thankful for their sacrifice.
I think it needs the awareness about what a gold star is more important to me, I think, at this point, too.
Right.
It's everybody behind it, but I mean, I have it on my license plate, and I would say 90% of the people that see it probably have no earthly idea what that is. Still.
Right. Yeah, I have one on mine, too, and nobody knows what it is.
Thankfully, you know who does recognize it almost every time? The police.
Oh, yeah, they know.
And they know. So it has gotten me out of a ticket once or twice. But it is nice at least that the law enforcement respects the license plate, even if nobody else does. When you're doing your speeches, is there any story in particular that you like to tell, or is there any memorable speeches that you've given in particular that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I mainly talk about when I found out about my dad.
Okay.
That exact day. Like I said, I was like 4 or 5. Grade-wise, I don't know where that would put me. But, I was sitting in my room. I knew exactly the spot and where in my room. And, I was really upset. And my mom had walked in and she had asked me what was wrong. And then I had told her, everyone has a dad, but where's mine? And, as a mom, she didn't really know what to say to me, for the sake of being 4 or 5 years old, you can only say, a certain thing. And I just remember her telling me that a bad guy killed him. And ever since that day, I kind of knew that I had to do something. I had to take action. And, growing up throughout high school and everything, I always sat there, wondering what people would think of me. I sat there and wondered, if I do something and, follow through with something that I want to do, what are people going to say about me? I always sat there living in that fear until one day I just said, I don't care what people think of me. You're going to lose people in your life, and that's just how that works, and people are going to talk.
Well, that's not fair. You're not allowed to figure that out this young, because it took me until just this last year to figure that out.
Well, I mean, I'm saying growing up, that's how I
get you. It is, that is a great mindset to have. And I think that it is tough to get out of that branding of Gold Star too, to step out. And I've said often that the friendships that I've formed, with people, not necessarily in the Gold Star community, but outside of it, people that heard about it and then became friends with me, it feels somewhat superficial. People that I've met outside of the Gold Star network, and then they found out about it afterwards. We have this one woman who I met I used to play in a band, and I met her at an epilepsy foundation thing. My drummer had epilepsy, and she just happened to show up, and she was Army, and she found out I was Gold Star, and she's just been a wonderful, wonderful friend and supporter ever since then. She's probably one of the best people that I've met through all of this stuff. But other than that, I feel like a lot of these relationships are tough. So that's got to be tough as a high school kid to, have to did all of your friends know, or did you kind of keep it into yourself, or?
Well, my friends did know. Growing up, people knew. My dad has road signs in his honor in my hometown. So people knew. But people honestly treat you different. And I started to notice that more and more, when I was talking about, people treating me different and all that, it's just everyone, like, my age, really. And people just looked at me differently, and I couldn't do anything about it ever. And I found myself, like, hard to, like, find friends who truly were my friends, really. And just weren't, I don't know what's the word. They weren't just fake towards me, I guess, in a way.
Superficial, I get you.
Yeah.
I feel that very much, especially when I played music, there was,
Right.
I'd go out to bars and stuff, and these people would connect with me based on music because I was playing music for my brother. And then it was like, okay, are they actually friends with me, or are they friends with me because
Right.
I've got all this cool sponsorship stuff and all this other stuff that I'm doing, you know what I mean?
Right.
And, there's obviously, you sort those people out pretty quickly, thankfully.
Oh, yeah, you find out truly, yeah. But, like, as I got older up into college, you still run in those people, but, like, it got better. And I found my group of friends, and, I found, people that support me for who I am. And, I'm thankful for all of them because, younger me never thought I would find my true friends. So.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that you've found that community.
Yeah.
And so you've never been involved with TAPS or anything like that?
No. I've heard of it, but I haven't really done much research on it. Sorry.
Well, I would implore you to look into it.
Okay. We get the catalog.
Yeah, and I did too. Hey, look, I was the same way. I was like, I don't need them. I don't need them at all. And then all of a sudden I was just like, all right, let me see what's up. And the just some of the connections I made from it were just cool. And you're probably in a position too where you may be able to assist others, especially with your speaking and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I'd imagine that TAPS would be right up your alley for that.
Yeah,
kind of
I do remember seeing the catalog when I was like younger, like probably 10, 11, 12. But I don't live with my mom anymore, so I don't get the catalog myself.
Fair enough. Mallory, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your incredibly personal and powerful story. Your courage in speaking publicly, your dedication to honoring your father's memory, and your determination to raise awareness about Gold Star families is truly inspiring. We're grateful you've taken the time to be here and share your journey with us. To everyone listening, we encourage you to remember the significance of these stories and the real families behind them. If you can support our mission in any way, please consider buying us a coffee through the link provided. Every small contribution helps us continue telling these stories. And as we close today, let's raise a symbolic toast. To Sergeant First Class Daniel B. Crabtree, a dedicated soldier, courageous Green Beret, loving father, and enduring inspiration. May his legacy live on through Mallory, her family, and through all those who carry forward his memory. Here's to the stories that matter and the heroes behind them. Say their name. Sergeant First Class Daniel B. Crabtree. This podcast is made possible by supporters like you. Special thanks to Danielle Metal of Satellite Beach, Florida, for believing in our mission and donating a desk to our podcast. Your support means the world. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Gold Star Stories.